we might be expecting one more trustee, but let's roll on here. Village of Winnetka, regular Village Council, regular meeting for December 16th, 2025. We'll call this meeting to order, and let's mute our cell phones and other devices so we don't interrupt the proceedings. And I'll ask Manager Kazinas to do a roll call for attendance.
Trustee Myers.
Here.
Trustee Dahlman. Here. Trustee Orsick.
Here.
Trustee Albinson.
Here.
President Dearborn.
Here. And Trustee Albinson, would you lead us in the pledge?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You want to call Rob Apatow?
Trustee Apatow.
Okay. I don't think Trustee Handler is going to make it tonight, I don't believe. Kristen, let's do a quorum check.
Our January meetings are January 6th and January 20th. Everyone plan to attend?
Everyone here?
That night, I may be able to log in remotely.
Okay.
Traveling. I'm also going to be missing the second week in February, which I'm not sure if we're going to be at that meeting yet or not.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. We'll move on to item 4, public comments from the public, but I'll ask if anyone in the audience wants to speak about an item not on tonight's agenda. Please remember to keep your public comments to a maximum of 3 minutes so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. I don't see anyone. Jody, do you want to speak? Later. Okay. All right. We'll close public comment. Move on to reports. We'll start with the trustees. We'll start with Trustee Albinson.
No report.
Trustee Orsick.
No report.
Trustee Dahlman.
No report.
Trustee Apatow.
No report tonight.
Trustee Myers.
No report.
No report. And Village Attorney.
No report tonight.
Village Manager.
I do have a report this evening. I would like to invite our Public Works Director, Tom Powers, to the podium to give a brief update on our status of our snow response as well as our leaf collection efforts.
Welcome, Tom.
Thank you.
Are we doing this?
All right, there we go. Thank you for the opportunity to address you tonight about our leaf and snow and ice. It has been a challenging season, but I'm always happy to give you an inside look within Public Works, so thank you for the opportunity. I'd like to start by just kind of going through a quick overview of our leaf operation. It runs from October 13th through December 1st was the plan for this year. As of November 26th, we knew that there were a lot of leaves still out there, so we were planning to extend till December 8th. Another kind of a little bit unusual facet to our leaf collection is some villages will schedule your pickup on specific days. We do not. We have a smaller, I guess, workforce, I guess, as you'll see, and there's a lot of competing demands on that workforce, so we don't want to make commitments that we aren't sure we could meet in terms of hitting certain days. So what we do is we post updates daily on the webpage to show what zone we're working in, and then residents can go there and see what zone we're working in. So like if you know you're in zone 2 and you see we're working in zone 1, then you know, okay, if I'm going to get my leaves out in the next day or 2, the village should be there to get the leaves. So that's kind of how we run our operation. Our internal operational goal is to make a complete pass through town to get all zones serviced once per week during leaf season. We don't always achieve it, but I would say we're pretty good. We're probably like 90%. When leaf volumes get high, that's when it becomes a struggle. And then as you may or may not know, the equipment we use for leaf collection is the same equipment we use for snow and ice control. We just have interchangeable parts that we swap on the vehicles and sidewalk tractors. What that operation looks like is we have up to 5 crews. When we have 5 crews going, I call that full tilt boogie. That's when we got everything humming. The pushing crew is our sidewalk tractor. We have 4 of those that we use to push the leaves off the parkway and into the street. We then push those into the what's called a leaf pan on the refuse trucks. We have 2 refuse trucks, and those will compress the leaves to maximize the volume there. The pros to that method is we can deal with a high volume. It's efficient and it moves fast. If you look at the picture there on the screen, you can see that's a street ready to go. We got all the leaves in the street. We were lucky on that particular day, it was dry. We can just go like Pac-Man down the street, boom, 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 get all those leaves, very efficient operation. Some of the cons to the pushing operation is it's not as clean, particularly when it's wet. You'll get leaves that are left behind. Again, when it's wet, there's tire ruts. I don't know if I would call them ruts, but the tires leave a mark. We ask the guys to rake those out as much as they can, but there is a limit to how much, they can rake. But that's primarily when the parkway's wet, and then especially when the parkway's wet, we always make sure a sweeper follows to clean the curb lines with that collection method. Our second method of collection is the leaf vacuum truck. That is, our full-size truck that has a roll-off. Those are the same trucks we use for snow plowing, and we load them up with salt, but when we're not doing that, we put the leaf vacuums on the back. We have 3 of them. There's a driver, and the second employee operates a remote control that moves the vacuum arm to suck up the leaves. There used to be 3 employees, but that was when it was not remote control. You needed an employee to move the arm. Well, our operation now is much more efficient, much more cost-effective. So the good thing about the leaf vacuum is the final product is very clean. We could suck up all those leaves. Generally, at the end of leaf season, we always run the whole town with the leaf vacuums to try to get stray leaves that may not be in a pile. It's really, I would say, a high standard. And they're really our only option, in my opinion, on the arterials. We don't want the sidewalk tractor going in and out of traffic because it pushes it off into the street, and then it goes down the street, pushes down. We don't want that on our arterial roads, so it's just much safer to have a driver sees the leaf truck. I'm sure you all experienced this. You see it, you kind of know what's going on, you know what to expect as you're passing it. There's not there's a little tractor popping out, so it's just much safer. The cons to the leaf machines and why we've kind of upped our game with the pushing is they're very slow. It takes time to suck up those leaves. They have mechanical parts. It's fans, belts, which are prone to breaking. That's why we ask people to put their pumpkins to the side of the leaf pile, because if the pumpkin's in the leaf pile, it could damage the machine. Ice chunks and things like that would damage the machine. So we did have a problem with one of the machines this year that we limped along the best we could, but we're going to have to send out for service here. Anyways, as I said, when we're at full tilt boogie, we got 2 push crews and 3 leaf vacuums, and then 2 sweepers following those operations, which takes up 11 employees. That is both the street and sewer department employees. We have 14 employees total in those departments, so that is almost maximizing out those departments. And we have other things we got to do. We got to do daily locates for utilities. We do weekly checks on our pump station. We respond to emergencies when people have sewer problems, sinkholes, things of that nature. So we wouldn't want to design a system where we had and people take time off. We don't, we restrict it, but we allow it also. And then besides that, during November, which is kind of the prime time of leaf season, we have a variety of other odd jobs that we do around town. We put out the GFIs for the holiday lights that the holiday lighting vendor plugs into. We install the leaves and garlands. We put out the nutcrackers. We do a little bit with holiday decorations in terms of the Winnetka letters. We now have some snowflakes we put out. Then I talked about the locates and the rest of the stuff. So none of those jobs stop us from leaf collection, but they keep us from being at full capacity on certain days. So what made this year challenging, I know this graph is a little busy, I'm gonna try to explain it to you, but the orange line is the daily high temperature, and then the green bars are the volume of leaves that we dump at our yard and then we have hauled away. So it goes from October 13th to December 8th. And what you'll notice is for October 13th, I hope I said that right. From October 13th to November 10th, a little bit before November 10th, we had really nice weather. It was quite enjoyable weather. If you remember, it was often in the 50s and 60s. There was 70s in October, which is great for enjoying the outdoors, but it's not great for making the trees want to drop their leaves. So you can see on November 10th, which is right after our temperature dropped down to 40, which I put a big arrow there, you could see our leaf volume went way up. And during that period, we also lost a variety of days, which I'll go into more detail on that, where we weren't able to get full capacity on our leaf program. But whenever this happens, and it's becoming more common, our leaf season basically becomes 2 weeks, maybe 2.5 weeks. I guess if you add to the 8th, that's why we knew we were at least going 3 weeks. It's a lot of leaves to collect in a short period of time. And then when you have some snow, early snow, it's really a perfect storm it's very hard for us to keep up. But besides, even with that, if you look at the calendar, Public Works worked, besides the beginning of the month, which was low volume, and Thanksgiving, we were here every day. We were either collecting leaves or working on snow and ice. And some of those days were very long, as I'll touch on quickly. I know it's a busy meeting, so I don't want to drone on forever, but just looking at November itself, we knew we had that early snowstorm. It was a nighttime storm. We still had quite a bit of accumulation. It's 4 or 5 inches. I can't remember the exact total, but we had to start converting our equipment on November 9th. We responded to that storm on the 10th and then converted our equipment back on the 11th. That was 3 days lost to leaf collection, right when the leaves were starting to come down the most. And then that's also the period, we don't want to put the holiday decorations out too early, so that from the 17th and 18th, we were working on holiday, the wreaths and garlands and some of the other stuff. We were still working on leaves, but we lost crews. We weren't able to go full capacity. One of the real killers was on November 25th, the Ravines force main broke at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. And that was the 19-hour day. They stayed till 1 o'clock in the morning to get that fixed, because we don't want that water to go into the lake, so we gotta get it fixed right away. So that was a very long day. Sewer and streets employees were here, not all of them, but that took 2 crews out of the rotation for the next day, because they need to recover after a day like that. And then we have this big storm on the 29th. We saw that coming. We had the forecast, so we had to stop leaf collection on November 28th, get the equipment ready. We knew it was a big storm. We converted everything. Sometimes we'll convert it. That first storm, we only converted a couple trucks. This storm, we converted everything. And then when I get to the snow and ice, I'll talk about that response. But after that storm, and then about 7th, we got another 5 inches. 9.4 inches was enough. We got another 5 inches a few days later. We were able to sneak a couple days in between of leaf collection between those storms, but after the 7th, we had to really put a halt to things. One other side note, we can work through it. Rain slows us down. It was very wet right before the big snowstorm, so that was slowing us down as well. The leaf vacuum doesn't work as well on wet leaves. The pushing thing works fine, but the loads are heavier, the truck fills up faster. What I want to make clear with our leaf collection is we have every intention of making sure the town is completely serviced. They were actually out there today. They got, I'd say so when we had to pause things, we were working in Zone 5, which obviously we'd gone through Zone 1 through 4, which is basically the west side, and then Zone 5 is kind of the start of the east side going back up north. So they're about 80% through Zone 5 as today. They've been out working on leaves yesterday and today. The weather's going to warm up. We're going to keep working. We're not walking away till April. It's probably not going to be the standard that Winnebago's used to. If you got leaves in snowbanks, embedded in snowbanks, buried under the furrows, we're just going to have to wait for that to melt till we can get to it. But we're going to make a full pass, get as much as we can, and do the best that we can with it. Certainly not ideal conditions. All right, let's talk about snow. So we've had quite a bit of snow, as I'm sure you've noticed. It's been 20 inches so far this year, and that is, I would say, unusual. It's a historic high for November. It's the most snow we've had at this point. We're about 25% into the season since 1978. And overall, through December 7th, it's the 4th greatest on record. I thought it would be useful to kind of talk about how we structure our response. We prioritize our response so we can pre-plan what the crews are doing when they get here and where they're going next, and it's very organized. And we do that with the prioritization. We start with the main streets, the arterials, and collector routes, so that maybe you have to drive in the snow a little bit, but once you get on collector route, you're safe. Once we get those cleared, then we start focusing on the residential routes. If it's around when there would be services or school, we like to make sure we get those streets first within the residential routes. And then we, obviously get the alleys and cul-de-sacs as well. Once that's all cleared, then we focus on the parking lots. We'll do an initial clearing during the daytime as much as we can, but the main cleanup, at least the parking spots, we have to wait till nighttime. We declare the snow emergency and we clear the spots. Once the snow is done generally, and we've hit those first 3 priorities, then we'll run the sidewalk network. As I mentioned during the budget presentation, we're trying something new this year, where we're trying to elevate what we call the Sidewalk Express, where we hit a route that gets all the schools and the walking paths, the main walking paths to the school, not every sidewalk in town, just trying to ease the burden on walking to school. So we think we can elevate that up to be equal with public parking lots and alleys and cul-de-sacs. And I think we've run that once or twice so far. It's been decent. Then usually around that time, we will also then do what is called the overnight downtown cleanup. That's where we get all the snow piles out of our downtown business districts. We push them out in the street. We get a blower, it blows them into the trucks. So it gives us that nice, clean, downtown, business-friendly feel. That is the end of our main operation, but we're still not done. We have a lot of what I would call general cleanup that we do, that it just takes days. We don't want to work overtime on it, but it's something we come back and we continue to work on. And that includes things like other extraneous snow piles. For a big snow like this, when we run the sidewalk tractor with the V-plow, and I'll go over that real briefly, it creates little furrows. Those furrows create little obstructions at the sidewalk intersections, so we have to go back and clean all the sidewalk intersections. We have to get the bridges. Anywhere there's a sidewalk next to a road is a challenge, because you can't run the V-plow. The V-plow pushes half the snow into the street, and then the road plow comes by and pushes all the snow back on the sidewalk. It's very frustrating for the residents and us. So we have to come back with 2 sidewalk tractors, push it in the street, and then blow it over the sidewalk into the lawn. So that's not part of our normal sidewalk operation. That's a special cleanup that we do afterwards. And then with the leaves, a lot of people put their leaves on the sidewalk or the parkway, if the parkway is a sidewalk, as they should. Then the leaves end up in the street. this was very challenging. So that was creating us problems as well. Or we didn't want to upset people by shooting leaves that they had collected into their lawn, which unfortunately they did happen a little bit. But anyways, we pushed back the corners to clean up the intersections, and then the bridges, they're very similar to the sidewalks right next to the road. We just have to remove the snow to get those sidewalks on the bridges open. So how that worked for this most recent storm, the storm started on Saturday at 7 a.m. It ended at Sunday just after midnight. And we did get a little bit more snow on Monday, but it was just the icing on the cake at that point. They were done with the main roads by Sunday morning. So after the storm ended at 12:30, they had them opened up in time for, if there was a rush hour, what would have been a rush hour. They had the residential roads done by Sunday night. They got the parking lots initially cleared on Monday, and then with the final cleanup on Tuesday night, the parking lots are part of the overnight cleanup as well. The sidewalk network, that's what I'm calling it, was done Monday night, except for the general cleanup I mentioned. And then we did the downtown cleanup Sunday night, and was completed Monday night / Tuesday morning. But all in all, the crews worked, and when we enter in a snowstorm like that, we split them half and half. They go 12 hours on, 12 hours off. It's 24 hours a day we're responding. They worked from Saturday morning until Wednesday morning. And then general cleanup after that point. I'm just going to briefly go over sidewalks. I'm not going to go through this in detail, but depending on where the sidewalk is, we have a different approach. Depending on the depth, we have a different approach. But I know the sidewalks are important. That's probably what most people interact with the snow, when they're walking, out there walking. But we have 56 miles with our regular network, and then we have the special cleanup areas. Our primary tool is the V-blade on the sidewalk tractor. What's good about that is it's quick and simple. You can just drive down the sidewalk. It doesn't have a lot of moving parts, and it equally spreads out the snow on both sides. It's not like a straight blade. If you turn it towards the residential side, you have a big pile, or if you put it towards the roads, it makes more manageable furrows. But the furrows there are disadvantages to them too, so they have to be cleaned up at the intersections. And as you'll see, some of the challenges we face knowing where the sidewalk is can be difficult at times, and when that happens, they do damage lawns. We do come back and repair those lawns in the spring. Our second tool is the straight blade. So when we're done with the V-plow, then we change out the plows, we get the straight blade. This is kind of our second step of the sidewalk program. This is good for pushing the snow where we want it to go. The V-blade's kind of a dumb tool, if you will. It just pushes it out of the way. But the straight blade, you can put it where you want. Again, it's good for detail work. It doesn't break. It's just a plow blade. It is slower because you have to back up, back and forth to kind of get the snow where you want it. And to get to that part of the operation, you got to be done with the V-blade because you're not going to go back and forth swapping the blades. And then we often use it with the box blower, which is our third tool for the sidewalks. And this is what we use primarily when we have to remove the snow. Like there's nowhere to push it. We need it to go somewhere else than where it is. We use it around the schools quite a bit where there's wide sidewalks adjacent to the curb. You still have to push the snow into the street, and then we blow it to the parkway from there. It is a slower operation. They had to use this, I think it was 2018, that big blizzard we had. I think it was like 20 inches of snow by the lake here. They had to use this to do the network, to do the 56 miles, and it took them a week to run that machine. It's slower to run that. And then just a reminder, we do not salt the sidewalks as a matter of practice. We will salt around the facilities, but to salt the whole village would be very difficult and expensive. Just thought I'd be real quick to get a flavor of what it's like running that sidewalk machine. The operator sent me some pictures of what he was experiencing. And, sometimes you don't know where the sidewalk is. If there's any residents who are watching the video, we would encourage you to throw a couple, if you're concerned about your lawn, those little edge markers can help a lot. Like on the left here, should he follow didn't know whether he should follow the footsteps or not. He went with his instincts and went where he thought the sidewalk was, and that was the right move because the footsteps were not following the sidewalk. And then this one here on the right, it may look obvious where the sidewalk should be, but there are times where it jogs. And if we put little stakes out on the jogs we know about, but there's little tricks that it just takes experience. So if you look in the background, that big tree on the left, this photo just popped up is the same thing after it was plowed. It was a straight shot, no problem. Sometimes it isn't. So this one, he realized the tree was into the sidewalk, and the sidewalk was not a straight shot, and he had to turn at the last minute, and did damage. And things like that, it's just going to take them. I'll show you on the next slide, but we do have a decent amount of, I'm going to call them new employees who haven't experienced these big storms. Over 50% have been here since '22. I'm not going to go through all these, but every snow event, we have a after-action meeting where we talk about what went well and what needs improvement. We've identified some stuff. We're always looking to improve. We're not being complacent. But the one thing I would say is leaves in the right-of-way. When seasons overlap, we're always going to be behind the 8 ball, and it's always going to be a difficult, messy operation. And we appreciate everyone's patience when that happens. And with that, I'll.
Thank you, Tom. That was excellent. You guys did great work. We know that. We appreciate that. Questions for Tom on this before we move on?
I just have
Go ahead, Tina.
I just have a suggestion. It might be helpful since we have some new staff and there's some wonky areas like Forest Glen, right? It's right there on the street. Maybe maybe we have this and we just need to publicize this a little bit better. If, it's been 4 or 5 days after a snow event and your sidewalk's still not plowed, maybe there's an email or something that people could just, send an alert and not have to call or,
Yeah.
like some sort of system is, do you feel like, you think we think you like garbage, right? You think you've been missed versus you just didn't get your stuff out there early enough. Maybe there's a way to have a website or email or something that allows people to register, hey, I think you may have forgotten us.
Yeah, there's the contact us, and then something I believe is in the budget. We're looking into a CRM, customer request manager software.
Yeah.
The system we're looking at is powered through Microsoft Teams. So there's some setup and there's some, I guess, synergies with a lot of the business that the village does. So the reason it's taking a little bit longer is we have to get that set up.
Okay.
So it makes sense for all the business processes that we do here. And CRM is one of the, so that was something where if you don't want to call, you can put in a service ticket and it'll go routed right to the department that.
That's a good idea, though, Tina. That's a good idea. Scott?
I was just going to say, obviously, this was an exceptional, unusual situation.
Yeah.
In these situations, though, it sounds like when we have a chance to get back to plowing or taking care of leaves, we go back to the normal schedule of zone 1 through 5. I know the gentleman here who had talked at the last meeting said the schools were particularly, there were big piles there, maybe a little dangerous with kids on bikes. I don't know if, in these exceptional situations, step back, reprioritize, perhaps focus on those areas where maybe there's,
so
safety concerns.
So that was, we did the downtown cleanup Tuesday night. So that was a Tuesday board meeting, and we were still on split crews. But they were, before those comments, that's part of their workflow, the general cleanup. One of the first places they go is the schools. And it is the nature of the V-plow that sometimes at the intersection, it's not pristine until we can come in and do that final cleanup with the straight blade and the blowers to, make it 100% passable. It's just the nature of the beast sometimes.
You guys kind of do what you have to do and figure it out. If you have to adjust, you adjust, and
Yeah.
you made it work. And for those of us that were in town for the storm, we saw the plows go through, and, it was obvious that the crew was working overtime and really working hard, so.
Yeah, in my opinion, obviously I'm biased. There's a lot of detail work we could have done a little better, but overall, I think they responded
they did
very
a great
well
job.
compared to neighboring communities. The conditions of our roads were really good,
I agree with
really
that.
early.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom. Thank you. Kristen, thank you for that, for having Tom here.
Thank you, Tom, and we should all thank Tom's wife. It's her birthday tonight, and he is going to be late to the celebration,
Right.
so he could share his snow knowledge.
Is she out plowing?
Call a friend. Okay, thank you, Tom. Kristen, anything else on village manager report?
That was enough of a manager
Okay.
report. Thank you.
Brief president's report. First off, I'd like to acknowledge our village attorney and his law firm, Elrod Friedman, for making a donation on behalf of the Village of Winnetka to the New Church Township Angel Fund, which we appreciate. Thank you, and thank you. And you represent a lot of communities in the area, and you made donations to their various preferred charities and so on, and it's really a nice gesture. So thank you for that. Couple events that occurred, and you all know this. The tree lighting occurred on December 5th. A number of village staff were out there. I know that, and I probably will miss someone, but Josie Clark was there, Nick Nari, Tim Sloth, Rob Bahan was there, Tina Dahlman. I didn't see Tina. I saw the other half of the Dahlman-Roselli family, but it was a great. Yeah, we didn't see you there, but it was a great event. It was cold, but it was a really nice event, a great tradition in Winnetka. Kristen and I met at the League of Women Voters the other day, along with our sister communities, our friends from Kenilworth and Northfield, to give a state of the village. It was really the village managers that gave an update. Kristen gave a marvelous update of Winnetka. There were a number of questions. It was really quite well attended, so it was really a good event. And the more I hear from Kenilworth, certainly, and to a lesser extent maybe Northfield, but Glencoe, Wilmette, we just share so many common issues that it's just good to get together and hear it from the managers and from the various representatives. So that was terrific. Let's see, was there anything else? No one's really here tonight, but if you come next time, you'll see the new chairs in the village hall, or the village chambers, and the bench. Some benches are still here, but really nice job, and hopefully your office will be prepared soon enough, right?
By the end of this month.
By the end of this month, okay. So that's really all I had. We can move on now to item 6, establishment of the consent agenda. Does any trustee wish to remove any item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Seeing no one raising their hand on that, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
That's a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, no opposed. All right, we'll move on to item 7, approval of the consent agenda. And Kristen, would you read the consent agenda items?
Approval of the village council minutes for the October 30th budget review meeting and the November 18th regular meeting. Approval of the warrant list dated November 27th, 25 to December 11th, 25 in the amount of $1,228,183.63. Resolution number R87, 2025, approving closed session minutes, determining the need to keep minutes of certain closed meetings of the village council confidential, and authorizing the destruction of verbatim recordings of certain closed meetings of the village council for adoption. Resolution number R95, 2025, approving a collective bargaining agreement between the Village of Winnetka and the International Union of Operating Engineers, Local 150 Public Employees Division for adoption. Resolution number R98, 2025, approving a service agreement with Municipal GIS Partners Incorporated for Geographic Information System Services, and a letter of agreement with the Village of Kenilworth regarding Geographic Information System Services for adoption. Resolution number R99, 2025, waiving bidding and approving a purchase of software licenses from Tyler Technologies Incorporated for adoption. Resolution number R101, 2025, approving an agreement with Ancura Consulting Services Group LLC for consulting services for adoption. Resolution number R102, 2025, approving a proposal with Civic Plus LLC for software services for adoption.
Okay, thank you for that. May I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
And Kristen, that's a roll call vote?
Trustee Orsick?
Yes.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Trustee Apatoff?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to item 8, ordinances and resolutions. And we'll start with 8A, resolution number R103, 2025, waiving competitive bidding and approving a contract with Tesca Associates, Inc. for professional landscape and architectural design services, and this is being considered for adoption. Tonight, council will discuss an engagement with Tesca Associates for refining the plan for the former post office site. And tonight, we have Community Development Director Scott Mangum to review. Okay, Scott,
Yes,
welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, President Dearborn, trustees. This discussion tonight is an update from the October 14th Village Council study session, where we reviewed the post office site, some of the past discussions and plans that have looked at that site in the past, and then looked at the future of the site. And so at that point, council provided direction to look at engaging a firm, consultant firm for direct public engagement to come up with the concepts for the future use of that site. With that and additional feedback that was provided that evening, the Village Council noted a successful public engagement as part of the recent streetscape projects in Hubbard's Woods and Indian Hill that were performed by Tesca Associates. And with the Village Council stating the need to move relatively quickly with this process, we did reach out to Tesca to get a proposal from them. So this evening, Jody Mariano, the Vice President of Design for Tesca Associates, is here to review that proposal. That's found on page 141 of the packet.
Welcome, Jody.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me. I know that the proposal is in your packet, so what I thought I might do for this evening is just give a high-level overview of the proposal and how it's organized, and then maybe we could just have Q&A and discussion. Does that sound like?
Sure.
Makes sense? Okay. So the proposal is organized into 2 phases of design. The first phase is what we call the preliminary concepts and engagement, and the second phase is refined concepts and engagement. So engagement is throughout the whole process here. The scope is focused on the post office site between Elm and Oak, just on the west side of Chestnut, just over there. And we know that it's been studied for multiple years by the village. It's been studied dating back to, I think, 2007. Tesca was involved in some studies as part of the downtown master plan and post office site redevelopment scenarios. That was back in 2016, so we did some concepts there. The concepts that were done back in 2007, I believe were done, they were done by another firm, but I believe that they were done before Dwyer Park had been redeveloped, so those concepts looked at some development that kind of projected into Dwyer Park. So the village does have a whole range of concepts that looked at multiple different building types, land use types, ranging from residential, commercial, mixed use, parks and open space. And this scope here does not intend to reinvent the wheel. We have a lot of great examples to pull from, but instead it looks to just kind of collect and aggregate the big ideas from all of those and put forth some concepts for public review and input. So I'll go through the phases here and stop me if you'd like to kind of talk about each task. But phase 1, the preliminary concepts and engagement, we would start with a kickoff meeting to meet with staff and just to confirm our scope and schedule and deliverables. We propose to just kind of sketch out 4 strategies for development, and I'll explain. In scoping this project with staff, we talked about how we could consolidate the big ideas that came out of the previous studies. And it seems like there's an opportunity to look at a range of development types. We could touch the site lightly, or we can touch it more heavily. For instance, we can consider development that maybe is not as high of a cost by developing buildings and land uses that don't require digging down, that work with the topo of the site, for instance. You know, that gazebo is about 5 feet above street grade, so there's a lot that can be done with working with the existing topo. The other end of the range is to think about things that really have a heavier hand in development, basements, taller buildings, that sort of thing. So one way to think about it is that we can think about development that relies on surface parking. That would be kind of the light-handed touch, or development that relies on structured parking. That would be the heavier-handed touch. Similar with land use. Vertical mixed use is a little bit more complicated, more expensive, or horizontal mixed use is less expensive, but lower buildings. So we thought that there could be a way to organize and strategize our 4 concepts that think about sort of a more minimum approach to a more maximum approach. Each of those developments will be coupled with an investigation and analysis about character and site and kind of patterning, pedestrian, vehicular circulation as well. But also we will be providing a very high-level planning level economic analysis to those things. And that will help us kind of guide, you know, how we can talk about these site developments with the community. I'm getting ahead of myself. But anyways, the staff committee meeting is to kind of talk about those strategies and how we think we might want to organize. Then we would start with a community input survey. And we feel that we find that in our experience working in the North Shore, and Winnetka especially, it's really useful to ask questions of the community before we delve into doing the drawings. And these questions that we would ask would be very high level. They would be things like, you know, planning principles. For instance, Elm Street is a business street, so might we want to consider commercial facing commercial on Elm? Likewise, on Oak Street, residential facing Oak Street could be facing one another and also kind of feel like a residential street. So these would be high-level planning principles that could help guide us. So we would put out some principles, ask the community to provide their principles. We'd also ask for their desires regarding uses and functions, issues they have moving in and around the site, just to kind of get into everyone's understanding about the property. Then we would report back the outcomes of that survey to the community, and then we would go into our preliminary concept development and economic analysis. So that would be our 4 concepts. They'd be presented in plan view. They would have site data tables that describe building square footages, parking quantities, parking ratios, uses within the buildings, make sure we're balanced with our parking. And then we would do a high-level cost analysis. We would be using similar projects that have been constructed in the area based on square footage costs for different types of buildings, parking, whether it's surface parking, structured parking. We have numbers that we use to kind of calculate those things without getting into detailed engineering. We're not there yet. And utilities, so we know generally what utility runs would cost. So we would do all of that internal work. We would share our actual costs internally with staff, but we believe that it would be really useful to talk about it with the community in a high-level way. So it could be similar to like when you look at a menu and it's $1 sign versus $4 signs was something we talked about with staff. And so when we present each concept to the community, they can see that, you know, the concept that relies on surface parking, for instance, and maybe horizontal mixed use has a $1 sign, whereas something with structured parking and vertical mixed use could be $3 or $4 signs. And so that would just help them kind of understand. We'd also be preparing metrics to kind of evaluate what are the quantities of commercial space, residential space, because it's more than just the plan, but it's what's all the stuff in the plan, what are we getting out of this 2-acre site. So those things would be presented as part of the concepts. And then we would go to focus group meetings. So focus group meetings would take course over 2 days. We would meet individually with elected officials and staff just to present the draft materials that have been done so far to get some preliminary feedback. We don't want to move anything to the public until we're all comfortable with what those concepts look like. So that's the end of the first phase. Before I get into the second phase, I just want to take a pause and ask if there's any questions about the preliminary phase 1 stuff.
Questions for Jody at this point? You want to just?
Just a point of, I guess, clarification, Jody. I think it's obviously very important in both the first phase and the second phase to have economics to provide a context, which I think is what you're laying out. I think one of the other points to make clear to people is, are those economics associated with a cost that the village would bear or the cost the developer would bear,
Sure.
right? Because I think that just putting a dollar sign,
Yeah.
it's also, wait, is that the taxpayers, or is that going to be something that a developer would have?
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. Absolutely. And so I think, yeah, we can think about, carving out the site to be something that is issued like RFP to developer versus the village. So yeah, we're happy to address those things too.
Well,
No, we'll get into it. I guess I look at this, and there's been a bunch of, I'm doing another survey, which is fine, but there's been a bunch of surveys on this already through the caucus and others, so I think we want to take what we understand and what might be different, or be a little more definitive on what we're trying to go after.
so Jody, are you going to be targeting the survey, taking into account some of the past information we've received, to Trustee
Oh, yeah.
Apatow's point?
Yeah, and I think part of, a lot of, something that we talked about at the staff level is, before the survey, before asking the questions, there will be like an introduction section of the survey to message back to the community why we're doing all of this and what this is about. Scott was kind enough to share with me the video from a previous council session where there were some residents that stood up and said, I didn't know that this was happening. And so I think we want to be really clear that, we recognize that a lot of work has been done. We're not scrapping it. We're taking it and we're kind of moving it forward to get into a more granular level of detail. So yeah, that would be part of the introduction of the survey, is messaging that back to the community before we ask questions.
And we can talk about this maybe on how to how we go about soliciting input, because I think that that is a timing issue, and we can just talk about that, making sure we're doing it at the right time of year when people are around. It's not spring break. It's not, that we're tapping into the Park District, which has an adjacent parcel. Because
Yeah.
although the caucus has surveyed it, I mean, the caucus only gets 700 people to respond. So I think we've got to think about, broadening the reach, because I think one of the statements was, really focusing on the people who live around the area, which is important, but it has importance to the greater village.
Yeah, the communications will be really important, and staff has been wonderful when we were doing streetscape planning for the Elm Street District and Hubbard Woods as well, but, what we found worked in the past was posting announcements on the website, on social media, and then for the residents, especially that live around the park, I think we determine a radius and send out postcards, make sure everybody is aware. And then when we do surveys, we typically keep them open for 6 weeks. And then we kind of monitor them and see if we need to keep it open another week or so. We work with staff to understand, we can track when the peaks are in the surveying. So if we know there was like a big Facebook push or a social media push, we can see if there was a spike there, and then do those things again. And so we'll kind of monitor it every week and make sure, that we're hitting the right people. I think the Park District probably has lists also that we can hopefully tap into. I will say we usually try and get, I think, 3% of community's population as a response. So 700 is not a bad number, but always want more.
Right, exactly. It's not a bad number, and the numbers that commented and participated in the comp plan were also pretty high, too.
Yeah.
But I think it's also, in my mind, I always hear I live in a neighborhood with a lot of younger families that are not as used to maybe connecting with the village in different ways, and so I've often thought that we should be targeting like the schools, the PTOs, those sorts of things. Or I think even the businesses on Elm Street, did their own little parking study, and they had like QWERTY codes, what was it, a year or two ago? So at the, at the cash register or the point of sale, they were encouraging people to respond, and so we can certainly,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure the merchants would be thrilled to
That-
participate.
That's a great idea. I mean, we've done that before in other communities where, if you're waiting for food at a restaurant, just have a little postcard on the table. We're doing some work in Glencoe right now on a streetscape plan, and we saw a big uptick in responses when they brought postcards to it's like a touch-a-truck event. It was just some community event. So if there's an event going on, I think we'll want to kind of tie into that as well.
Can I just make one more point about, I don't think this is really a point for the survey as much as for focus groups. I think one of the things that we as a group are going to wrestle with is, given the long list of capital projects that we all know are coming down the pike, even when we have an understanding of what might be done on the post office, the other question is, well, where does it slot in to that list? And different people might have different ideas of, this is the most important thing, I want it to go first, or you know what, let's just leave it as green space and go last. And that's something that I think would be of interest, certainly to me. That's a very hard thing to survey, but I think as part of the focus group conversation, to maybe bring in the idea that, hey, there's a lot of other things this village has to do. Some of it is not really an option. So where does this fall, and does that change your opinion of
Yeah.
what could be done?
As far as prioritizing different areas. Yeah, that could be, so the engagement in this first phase is this online survey. The engagement in the second phase is to review concepts and provide feedback as a live in-person public meeting, but also as a follow-up online engagement. And I think the priorities question could certainly be part of that, because that would be useful to hear from the community and from focus groups, for sure.
I'll add in, so Bob and I are the liaisons. We had an opportunity to meet with you, Jody, when you were meeting with staff, and a couple things. Number one, I know you've given a lot of verbal attention to potential concepts that involve vertical structures, but that's not a foregone conclusion that would be the case, right? Your most minimal touch scenario or concept, right? It may involve just what the most recent concept that former President Rentz had presented with, the parking lots with a park in the middle or some sort of public use.
Yeah.
So I want, at
Yes.
least for the public watching online or recordings of this, that we're not making an assumption that these concepts are all going to be of, sort of private or built structures. Secondly, and Scott, just to respond to your comment or observation there, another conversation we had is, Jody's comment about the dollar signs, about, the $1 sign versus up to $4 signs. As we think about long-term capital budgeting, what we as a community may think, well, is the least costly, being in alignment with an all-public solution may not necessarily be true. So take, for instance, the most recent example, or the high level, more of the public use only. 100% of those costs would be borne on the village, theoretically, to get that constructed, which, whatever the number we're throwing in our capital budget is, what, 7-8 million, or, right? And I think we're somewhat guessing on what that could be. But conversely, if we think through the, what everyone may consider as a, $4 sign scenario with vertical structures, public-private partnership with mixed use, or that actually may be a least costly scenario when we involve a public-private partnership scenario where the cost for that effort is primarily borne on the private sector, or let's say the potential private partner of the village. So I know that's, Jody, something else you'll have to take into consideration, not just what the total aggregate dollars are, but what is the cost to the public for these different scenarios.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing that up. Absolutely. And I think it'll be really interesting to kind of showcase, and I think the metrics will explain that too. Is it all park? Is it a portion of park? Is it a linear connection that connects to Moffett Mall? And there's lots of different orientations that we can test and test with the plan. But then, presenting it public versus private partnership. I think Tala Coffee is a great example of a successful public-private partnership that the village has done, and so we can learn from some of those things too.
Okay. Anything else before we move on to phase 2? All right, Jody, move on.
Okay, so phase 2. So we will have just come out of the focus group meetings and gotten feedback from you all. And then from that point, we'll go into developing materials for this public meeting, face-to-face meeting. So the first thing will be developing refined concepts, illustrative renderings, and then reviewing that back with staff. So there will be 3D renderings and more kind of refined, colorful illustrations, things that are able to really convey the design concepts to the community. And then we'll present those things to a community open house. We did this before in Hubbard Woods. You know, we know that not everybody can make it to a community open house. I think the one we did in Hubbard Woods was in January, and it was very well attended, but there were still folks that were in vacation. So we took the very same questions that we asked at the public meeting, where we had exhibit boards and interactive exhibits. We had Post-its and markers and dot stickers and all those great things. But we took all of those activities and we put them online as a survey. So if people couldn't attend, they could still participate. And so that would then be open for another 6 weeks. And so unlike the first survey, the second survey would showcase all of the materials and ask questions for feedback. And then we would kind of aggregate all of the responses that we got from the in-person and online survey, and we would present those to staff. We would look at doing zoning assessments for up to 2 concepts. So based on what we hear, maybe it's just 1 concept. We'll see what comes out of the public engagement, but based on what we hear, we think that 1 or 2 concepts may bubble to the top, and so those would be the ones that we would do zoning assessments for. Then we would take all of that, we would summarize it, and we would present it to council and get your feedback, make any final tweaks, and then the final deliverable will be like a technical memorandum that summarizes all of the work done to date, but up at the front would present the preferred concept or concepts. So that ideally you would be prepared to go out to an RFP if desired, to work with a private developer on a portion of the site, or to prepare the site for a phased implementation.
Okay. So at least it sounds to me like we are looking for an end product deliverable from TSCA. But in the meantime, we're going to have issues with communications, making sure that we have a robust public engagement that's targeted. Again, you mentioned at the beginning, Jody, we're not looking to reinvent the wheel here. We have a lot of information. We want to end up, and we have a study session, and we'll get to this in a minute, in October, I believe, where this end product would be reviewed, the TSCA's end product. Am I correct on that
Yeah, late
timeframe?
October of next year. That's right. That's what
No,
we would be.
of next year, correct.
Yeah.
Of next year, yes.
We're still in December, I think, yeah.
You're right. So, when Kirk and I met with Jody and staff and so on, there was a time frame. I mean, I think that you are moving pretty quickly under this time frame. Am I correct on that?
It's pretty common for an
It's
assignment
doable.
like this. Yeah, it's not uncomfortably fast. It's okay.
Okay, good,
Yeah,
good.
and so the next page has a time frame. I mean, it's phase 1. We would intend to begin now, and if this were approved, and we anticipate that we would finish phase 1 in April of next year, and then begin phase 2 in May, and then just like President Dearborn said, we would finish up in late October.
So the outreach to the public in phase 1 goes from January, let's say, through April. So we're not going out to people in July and August. You're sort of getting your thoughts together, your concepts together during those summer months when people are away, and then bringing them back to us in October.
Yeah, the outreach pieces, the first one, for phase 1, the community input survey would be January to February of 2026. And then the community open house and online engagement would begin in June. So ideally, June, July would be that time period. If somebody were away, they could still participate online if they were not present here.
Can we just talk about that?
Yeah.
I was going to say, Yeah, my concern is the pushback that we oftentimes get when critical decisions are being discussed in July and August. And, I like the idea of online, people being able to engage online as long as they just aren't in listen mode, if they're, can actively participate. But boy, if we could move some of that up into June and message to people that, a lot's going to be done before they,
Yeah, July's that word connotates I'm out of
Sure,
town.
yeah.
So is that possible to move some of that, the focus groups and so on,
Well, it's the open.
or the open house?
It's the open house, right? And I thought you guys did a phenomenal job. I had forgotten about the Hubbard Woods open house because it was a really horrible day. It was cold.
Yeah.
It was pretty packed in there. But I think, did you get pretty good response from
We had a
the
great response.
online?
Oh, yeah, we got a great response from online as well. We had a lot of people show up at the meeting, and it was a great venue. We were in the event space at Town and Oak,
Yeah.
which was great. But, yeah, we did get a good response online. I'd have to go back to see what our numbers were.
But what struck me about it, it was interactive, right? You had, it was just like you were walking, as I remember it, correct me if I'm wrong, so that if it happened in June, that was what goes live online. You're walking around, and, or it's like you're in front of a poster board with the options and the way you made it interactive. I thought it was really effective. So that takes away a little bit of my concern about it being in June, that, so long as we have a multi-channel kind of, if you want to make your voice known, this is the way to do it. It may work.
So Jody, given those comments, what do you think is possible with the open house if we don't continue that through July, that process?
Well, so the open house will be a one-evening event, but then we would keep the survey open for 6 weeks after that event. So I think we'd still want, I think we still want to target the open house to be in June, but then we would have the online engagement extended beyond that.
We couldn't move that to May?
Well, May is when we're scheduled to be preparing all of the concepts and the illustrative renderings and reviewing it with staff. So it usually takes us a good 3 weeks to kind of prepare all those materials. And we've scheduled the April focus group meetings. March is so working backwards, we've got March is when we're doing preliminary concept development. And we've got a community input survey scheduled for January to February. So we are packed up to do something every month, which usually is about right for an assignment like this.
I don't think early June is different from May. I think early June is fine. Once you get to July, the town kind of empties out, but you're in school through mid-June. People don't usually, the majority of people don't usually pack up immediately and take off. There's camps. I think as long as we're in June, I'm very comfortable with that. Earlier June, the better, but.
as long as we're sensitive to the school schedules, because there's, spring sings and,
Yeah,
all
for
kinds of
sure.
evening activities in June.
Yeah, we'll
That's in
want to
May.
make sure.
That's going to be in May.
Yeah, those are usually.
Any other questions, Jody, at this point, before we go to public comment?
Somebody
Okay.
might raise.
Yeah.
We'll go to, would anyone in the public, we'll go to public comment right now. Anyone in the public like to speak on this topic? Seeing none, we'll come back, we'll bring it up here. Any further thoughts? Now, this is, we're approving the contract with Tesca because it exceeds the manager level of $50,000. And so we're going to have a vote on this, but I just want to make sure that as they launch this, that we have a comfort level of what the project is, the scope of it. Scott and the team will be working closely with Jody, and so,
I just had a question.
Yeah, go ahead,
I know we talked about a while ago doing something extremely special with this space. And we talked about bringing in Michelangelo and Jeannie Gang and a few others to look at this differently than just incremental, and something very nice, I'm sure. I want to bring it back up to say kind of whatever happened to that.
well, I think that my recollection, and we were all up here at the time, but my recollection is that the Jeannie Gang thing fell through.
Yeah, well, it was premature.
is maybe premature. So I wouldn't rule that concept out depending on what they come up with. I mean, the whole idea of this deliverable is to come up with something that we could take out for design. Kirk, am I right on that?
Correct. The goal with this assignment is not to have Tesca design the final solution. It's to essentially establish the program that we either, like Jody had mentioned, if it does involve a public-private partnership, we could take out to an RFP to a private party. If it's something that's 100% village-owned, then we could use that as an RFQ to hire a world-class designer, architect, landscape architect, whatever the solution might be.
I just worry as we take a survey out to the public, what are we surveying them on? If we don't have
We're
a
surveying-
concept that may be world-class.
Yeah, for sure. And yeah, just to kind of,
Hard to
I
say,
didn't.
trust
speak-
us.
Yeah, no, I didn't speak to that, but I should have. I mean, what we're going to show is really generic building volumes. I mean, we'll show volumes and roof lines and maybe floor plates, but we are not getting into architecture. But it really is more about what are the land uses, what are the general sizes, what are the relationships between the site and the perimeters, and where does the public space want to happen? Because we know public space is going to be some component of this. We don't know what form it takes. But once we have kind of that general program, it can be given over to a designer. As far as what we ask the community, we're going to be asking them more about functions and uses, not about design.
But to build off of that.
Yeah, please.
Well, I was going to say, I mean, I think what Rob's touching on is something that's a little bit, it's different than just a space use. It's a statement, right? You think of Millennium Park, right? If you laid out a usage plan and put out blocks saying, well, here's a green space that's going to be in Chicago, people might react one way. But if you say, okay, well, no, this is going to be something iconic, people will react differently. Now, there's costs associated with that. You know, that's more expensive. Who pays for that? There are more complicated questions. But it is something different than just saying, okay, there's a green space or there's buildings. What do you think?
It's very different, and that was my concern. When you look at the origins of Millennium Park, it has truly changed the way, and there were other people that wanted to do something else with it, or mixed use, and the money, there was private money, as we talked about, that went behind it, because the idea was so remarkable. And if you look at, you fast forward, significant private money went into it, and it truly has changed that whole area.
But Millennium Park was created new.
Yeah.
Right now, we have parking there, and parking is going to need to be a component there in some way or form. We can't, I don't think our business district, we can't just say, oh, let's build a park without deciding how we're going to handle the parking demand.
So this,
So I think that there is some sort of built environment that's a part of this, whether it's underground, whether it's
yes.
open space with just remaining parking, the lightest touch possible. So I don't know if we can go out and say, let's build something iconic like Millennium Park without discussing with the community and hearing from them, how do you feel about this? Because we've heard from many people that they want it to be, it's our last important undeveloped lot and, you know, it's really iconic. There's other people who have said, you know, we've got tons of open space in this village, right? You know, we've got a village green, we've got beaches, we got parks, you know, we need other things. Like everybody you talk to has a
Right,
different idea.
and there's people I've talked to who have said, I don't want the village spending any money on this,
Exactly.
sell it to a developer, put up housing, I don't care, but I don't want my tax.
So I think we're just trying to get feedback on what uses.
But-
But we do have to,
No,
I
but-
think
but
we
see,
have
I
to
think-
acknowledge that parking is going to be part of it, one way or
But I
another.
think people might react differently if you said, and none of us know the cost of this, right? And none of us can define iconic at this point. But I think the question, and this could be another scenario, blue sky, we get private citizens to donate money, we can put parking underground, we make this something, you know, or there's some combination of surface parking and underground parking, you know. I think what we're trying to understand is how much are people willing to pay for and what do they want to get in return? If people come back and say, I don't want to pay for anything, I want a developer to manage this, okay, that's one answer.
Well, we're going to get this feedback, and I think the feedback will inform where we go in terms of design. If the feedback is, we love lower level parking, we may have to go to the public and look for resources. And we may have to go to the public if we want to make something more iconic. And so I think what Jody's going to deliver to us is something that ultimately we are going to have to take and go forward with a design concept. You know, and whether the feedback is something for something iconic or more extensive than what we're thinking right now, it very well may be, and we'll have to figure out how to pay for it.
Yeah, I think it should be a part of it. I mean, whether or not we go forward, the thinking should be to leave that part out and not give at least the residents here a Millennium Park type of feeling. Yeah, I think we're missing something. They may vote it down, that's fine, but at least we have to go out there.
Jody, is that this portion of the conversation something that you can incorporate into the survey, the focus groups, the open house?
Yeah, in the proposal, our scope includes that the concept packages would include what we call character imagery. So it's not going to be all just vanilla boxes, but it's going to be imagery, photographs from other comparable places that describe looks and feels of spaces without getting into detailed design. We're not ready for that yet. It's really more about what is the character of the space want to be. And I think iconic features, whether they be iconic buildings or iconic features as part of open spaces, can certainly be part of that. I mean, that's part of the character photos that we plan to do, for sure.
Okay. Well, you're hearing the feedback here, and I think if people have additional feedback, you can talk to Kristen, you can talk to Scott, and it'll get fed over to Tesca. And we'll be kept informed one way or another of progress as it goes along,
Yeah.
I assume. And then we'll hopefully before year end in October have something that, you know, we can maybe feel comfortable with going forward. That's the whole idea. Anything else before we vote on this contract? All right. May I have a motion to adopt resolution number R103, 2025?
So moved.
Second.
And that is a roll call vote.
Trustee Orsick.
Yes.
Trustee Myers.
Yes.
Trustee Apatow.
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman.
Yes.
Trustee Albinson.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Jody. We appreciate it, and we'll be hearing from you, no doubt. Old business, item 9, we have none. New business, item 10, 2026 Council Study Session Planning and Policy Direction. With council approval of the 2026 meeting schedule, which occurred a couple weeks ago, study sessions will be scheduled only as needed. Tonight, council will review certain projects and provide policy direction regarding tentatively planned study sessions scheduled for 2026. And Village Manager Kristen Kazinas will review this agenda item.
Thank you, President Dearborn. As noted in the executive summary of the packet, we have planned out some preliminary and tentative study session dates to allow council the opportunity to plan. I will make a note that these are subject to change, but we did think it would be helpful to have an idea of what was coming in the calendar year of 26. So February 10th, 2026, which would be our second meeting in February, council will discuss Western and Eastern Winnetka stormwater plans, which would include updates on the financial costs as well as proposed timing to complete the Western project and the cost and plan for Eastern. April 14th, we will discuss open space considerations and the village-owned street ends at the lakefront. May 12th is our long-term capital planning priorities and funding that we talked about during the budget. We are tentatively planning a 10-year look there and some prioritizing of the capital needs for the next decade. June 9th, we will discuss the planned update of the zoning code, and the goal for this study session will be strategizing how to start that project and identifying some preliminary items in the zoning code that staff is recommending that we review and consider updating. And then October 13th is the feedback from TESCA on the post office project that was just approved by council. Additionally, there are planned policy direction updates scheduled for regular meetings right now. January 6th, our next meeting, we'll be hearing from our structural engineer. Tom Powers will be back talking about the Hubbard Woods parking deck repair. That's a follow-up from the budget meeting as well, which repair and costs are critically necessary as opposed to the more aesthetic items included. So Jody will be back for that meeting as well. On January 20th, we'll be reviewing the Tower Road Pier repair and get feedback from our consultant there. Nick Nari will be at that meeting. March 3rd, we will have two items, an update on the climate action plan, and then EFSC will report back on their additional work for proposed regulations for ground-mounted solar panels. April 21st, we'll have an update on the Green Bay Trail project, and then September 15th, the Hubbard Woods streetscape. So what I'm requesting with these items in mind is council concurrence that this schedule aligns with council priorities for the coming year, or any suggested changes to the schedule.
Okay, so net, and we've all talked about the calendar and study sessions. We're consolidating what used to be some study session topics into regular meetings, but we do have study sessions scheduled for your calendars, February, April, May, June, and October. And then those other dates that Kristen just mentioned, regular meetings, will have these policy issues brought in for discussion at that time. And the items came out of our June meeting when we talked about priorities. One of the issues, and I've talked to everybody around the table here about this, has to do with the capital spending, and the post office is certainly one of those topics. And I've asked Trustee Handler, who's not here tonight, and to join myself and work with Kristen and Tim and the finance department to try to bring back to council for that May meeting, and maybe a touch point before then, if there's topics to talk about with council before then, and try to prioritize and get our arms around the enormous capital spending items that we have over the next 5 to 10 years and get some order to that. And so it's not a, Trustee Handler and myself in no way intend to micromanage the finance department. They know what they're doing, but we want to have some, again, a deliverable that council can talk about certainly before the budget session for 2026 going into 2027. So that's the whole idea of that. And if there are other topics that people feel we should talk about, let's bring them up. Scott.
Can you just clarify or remind me, what we talk about open space considerations? What's that focused on?
Oh, there was, in the last two caucus village platforms, they addressed open space and the protection of open space.
The question is is that parking lots? Is that just green
Well,
space?
the first one,
What does that mean?
2 years ago, it was just on open space, and they didn't define what that meant. I think the last year, they tried to define what it meant.
Yeah.
And I think it was, we'll pull out the platforms again and dig into that a little bit, but that was mainly green space as it came out of this last year. And so we're just responding to the caucus platform 2 years in a row, and we want to talk about it and how we might address that.
And if you'll review the June 10th, 2025 study session video, you'll see that there was quite an animated discussion at council as to what did each trustee define as open space, and there was not consensus. And in that meeting, there was direction that there would need to be further discussion about what is open space.
Yes, and I guess I'm wondering, would part of that study session also be the council's orientation toward uses for some open space, right? A parking lot, are we considering that for housing? You know, would that be suitable? Is that going to be part of the, kind of a strategy conversation?
I think, my understanding of this is that we would follow what the caucus sort of determined was considered open space. And I think that was green space primarily. So I did not contemplate bringing in
Okay.
to the
That might be a very
conversation
short
of the Indian Hill
conversation,
parking lot at
so-
that time, or even the Hubbard Wood structure at that time. I mean, the post office is obviously,
Yeah,
you
it's
know,
different,
a
its own
big piece
beast.
of open space. But I think this is a response to the caucus survey to the public, overwhelming response for protection of open space.
That's correct.
Yeah, I just think in terms of what the village controls of open space, that could be a very short conversation.
Say that again?
When you look at it from the village perspective, right, and we say, all right, well, what is it that the village controls in terms of, not what the park district controls, right?
Well, I think the open space,
Isn't that what this meeting will be about?
yeah, I think the open space is
So we
green
can
space.
discuss it maybe at that meeting?
Open space.
So we're saying, what controls might we put on park district open space?
I don't know what the
Okay,
conversation,
all right,
where the
all right,
conversation
Then
will
that might be
lead.
a more robust conversation.
Yeah.
All right,
But I think that that's,
It's all open
But-
space.
all
but
right.
I think that the first item of business would be to go back and look at those platforms, because they were fairly clear in terms of open space protection
Yes.
and what was open space. And so I think we just have to look at that, and we have to respond and talk about it collectively.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's helpful to go look at the questions, because the first year's questions was very murky,
Yeah.
probably wasn't a very good, both are probably not good survey questions from a survey research perspective. But I think there's greater, specificity provided in this past year's.
Yeah.
I think they tried to narrow it a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, one of the obligations I think we have, to the extent possible, where it makes sense, is to address some of those caucus surveyed, the platforms.
Sure, for sure. I just
And-
didn't know.
and so,
Yeah, yeah.
This was one that was 2 years in a row, whether they were perfect questions or not, I don't know. But the responses were pretty clear for each year. I mean,
Yeah, no,
the responses to the questions that were asked, and so I think we should address those, and that's the purpose for that study session.
yeah.
Yeah.
No, I was just going to say that this whole conversation is what that whole meeting is set for.
Correct.
So we can
Correct.
get into all of these details at that meeting.
Yep.
Correct. That's right.
Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
All right, anything else on that topic? Do we need to act on anything, Kristen, on that?
Just council consensus that the schedule looks good for right now.
Subject to change.
Well, so just to be very clear, put a fine pin on it in case anybody's watching. So we're saying that in the past, the second Tuesday of each month would be a study session. Unless something special comes up, or unless it's one of these scheduled dates we're talking about, there will not be a study session on the Tuesday, so people.
Or we may combine what might have been in the study session to a regular meeting. So
Correct.
we don't have.
Well, right, that's discussed down here, but right now, for instance, January, is it 13th, there's no, that would have been a normal
Correct.
study
There's
session.
no scheduled study
There
session.
will not be a village board meeting, study session, or any meeting that
We
night,
have
unless
two-
something emergency comes up.
Correct. We have 2 topics in January, one that we're putting on the 6th, and one we're tacking on to the 20th. That's more or less covering what might have been a study session. Historically, there have not been study sessions, oftentimes in July because of July 4th, typically not in August, oftentimes not in the back half of the year on the holidays. And so we're not actually making that many changes when you take into account that we're combining with regular meetings. So just trying to make the schedule a little more palatable and doable for trustees.
And for
hopefully-
staff.
And staff,
Yeah.
definitely for staff. And hopefully everyone can schedule to be at the study sessions, that we have, because they'll be important.
Great.
And trustee Dahlman, to your point, there's a change in the process. So for clarification and reiteration for the folks at home, The way we did it in the past is there was always a study session meeting on the schedule, and we would cancel that meeting if we weren't having it. The way we're doing it in '26 is there is no regular study session meeting scheduled other than the ones we've outlined, and we will schedule other meetings as needed. So something could come up, for example, in July that was significant that we would need to do, and we would message that to the community that we're scheduling that meeting.
And that notice goes out 10 days prior, or is it a week prior? What, if people who just want to make sure that they understand this change, what the default is, there's no meeting unless it's scheduled or it's, agreed to here. When does that go up on the website?
Well, that would depend, but no later than the required OMA 48 hours in advance. It depends on the urgency of the matter. Sometimes we know that we need it a week in advance, so we would notify as soon as we know, but no less than the required 48 hours.
Got it.
Yeah,
Thank
I think we can pledge that we would not schedule a study session that's not on the current calendar. We would do that well in advance of the 48 hours, because we would know that was coming.
Yeah. No, I get it. I just want to make sure it's clear because it is a change.
It's a
in the
little
way
bit of a
we've
change in
done
process.
in the last
Yes.
couple of years.
Okay, everyone okay with this calendar? Okay. We'll move on to item 11, appointments. We have none. And item 12, closed session. We do have a closed session. I would like to ask for a motion to adjourn to closed session for the purpose of discussing specific personnel and pending litigation pursuant to 2C1 and 2C11 of the Open Meetings Act. Under the motion, when we adjourn the closed session, this public meeting will automatically and immediately adjourn without the conduct of any further business or comments. May I have that motion?
So moved.
And that's a roll call vote.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Albinson?
Yes.
Trustee Orsick?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Myers?
Yes.
Okay, we move into closed session. Thank you.